And good evening, everyone. This is Uche and Joku. Welcome to a Sneaker Principle podcast. And just made it by the skin of my teeth. So again, just dealing with technical difficulties, but that doesn't matter. Tonight we're going to be talking. Actually, first of all, tonight is Teacher Therapy Friday, and again, this is an open call show. But however, earlier today, actually, I received a text message with a Twitter video that had me really thinking, and it had to do with CRT, critical race theory, which I'll be honest with you, I'm still trying to understand what that really is, because depending where you are in America, there's many different definitions being given out to what critical race theory really does mean. So, with that being said, tonight I really want to get some learning done here on my end. I want to learn from y'all about what this means, because I have my understanding of it, but however, it's not always clear. I'll be honest with you, it's not always clear to me what it is, only because some people talk about critical race theory as being a subject matter that was taught in law school to really look at how race impacts how policing is done. Sorry about that. I'm here trying to turn on my different accounts here so to make sure that everything is running. So how the law is interpreted through the eyes of race, and how race plays an impact into it. So, but then it's now become this thing where um, we're defining how do I put it? We're defining how we teach race in schools. Is that the best way to put it? How we teach culture, how we create culture relevant spaces, and using the umbrella of critical race theory as that thing to really define that. Again, for those of you who are here for the first time, my name is Uche Njoku, Sneaker Principal, and I go live every Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday, and with Fridays being Teacher Therapy Fridays. And what I really want to do is definitely learn tonight, and also hear from any teachers out there who might be in this space of having to deal with critical race theory as an actual subject matter within their school systems, and what does that do for you? Is this something that you are embracing 100%? Is that something that you're not? Again, I'm learning. I'm here in New York. I feel like as a principal here in New York over the past 6 years, I read about it. I saw like protests in the media about it, but it was never quite clear what it really meant. Like, to me, it just wasn't clear. I was like, okay, I get it, but I still don't get it, if that makes any sense. So, and over the course of this past year, I've met some school leaders from other states who have shared with me, how the subject is impacting their locality, within their school districts, and how some states are banning it, some states are forcing it. And again, I'm like, what is it exactly they're forcing? What is it exactly they're banning? I've seen books being burnt. I've seen some certain states where they say you cannot cover this subject matter. And I'm asking myself, what does that have to do with critical race theory? And at some point in time this evening, I'm going to try to look up live during the show the definition. Maybe I'll have to Google it to see what is the definition of critical race theory. YouTube right now is acting kind of weird. Let me go ahead and see if I can reestablish a connection there. And again, ladies and gentlemen, this is live, so I am here working and making sure that everything is operating as it should. And that's not it. Here we go. What's going on here? And for those of you who are watching right now, if this is coming out to you clearly and audio wise, and you've seen and you having any issues as well, please let me know in the chat. I'm going to do my best to address whatever issue they may be as this is happening live. Manage videos here. Again, I'm thinking here on YouTube something is happening, and which I'm not quite clear about. And let me see here. Let me go over here. Let me go over here. Man, this is working. I need an assistant. Here we go. YouTube is working. And again, let me see if I can show you that angle, that beautiful angle that I have here, so you can see what I'm working with here. I'm here trying to operate all of these different screens. So right now I have YouTube going, and the chat box, so I can see if it's any comments happening there. I have LinkedIn going, and let me see if I can get LinkedIn going fully. Okay, turn the volume off on that. So that's LinkedIn. Then this is Facebook. Facebook is cool. And here we go. And again, for those of you here for the first time, you can see on the screen the scrolling text. If you want to engage, if you want to join me in a conversation, I should turn on the green room. You can go ahead and type in tinyurl.com/tsp-video-guest. And what that will do, that will bring you right into this show. It will first park you in the green room, so you still be able to hear everything. And as soon as I can, I'll join into the conversation. In the past episode, what I've done is I've had people come on one-on-one, and maybe I might just bring multiple people in as well. So if I have multiple callers, maybe I might just bring you in. Let's just have a barbershop conversation or a beauty salon conversation about this topic of critical race theory and how this is impacting you as a teacher, maybe as a parent, or even a student. Again, here in New York City is not something that I've had to deal with directly. Cultural relevant classroom has been a topic, equity and diversity, and making sure our schools, really embrace the diverse population of students here in New York City. And that is something that I believe in. I believe that should be normalized. Look at me. I am a black man, born in Nigeria, raised in South Central LA. I'm African hood, West Side Rider, right? And all those identities has played into who I have been as a teacher, as a school leader, as an administrator, and I celebrate. I celebrate my Africanness every single day. I celebrate my blackness, as far as growing up here in America every single day, and I also celebrate my maleness. So all these things, makes me one diverse individual. So imagine all the children in our classrooms. Imagine all the teachers in our buildings. Imagine all the support staff and everyone in our community. So for me, that is very important. Create spaces where everyone feels welcomed and engaged. However, a lot of this has been politicized, and this is where I try to get some understanding. I am definitely, listen, I'm going to tell you right now, I am not an expert by any means. So before I play this video that I mentioned to you, a friend of mine sent this video, and this video is, I'll be honest with you, it was a little emotionally jarring for me, and but at the same time, I've heard these kinds of conversations and being held, and I've heard this level of emotion being shared when it comes to this notion of critical race theory. So let me go ahead and type in critical race theory. In Nigeria, we don't say theory. You say theory. We hit that E and O and R and Y, theory, hard. So here, I'm trying to find. So it's funny. I just type in critical race theory, and one thing that's interesting is Google will give you a definition off the bat. If it's something, a term, first off, it's a bunch of ads, and then after the ads, actually, let me do this. I can share my screen, and I will show you right here. Okay. Let's maximize this screen right here. Bam. So, critical race theory. So Google is showing me straight to ads. Tenets of critical race theory is an ad, defendinged.org is an ad. So these are all sponsored ads. So I always tell my students, you gotta be very careful when you're reading on the internet. When you see that AD, you have to understand there's usually an ulterior motive and there's funding behind why that's being pushed out. So I'm just looking for a very basic definition for critical race theory. Okay, I'm seeing ads. I'm seeing edweek.org. I'm seeing all these different spaces, and what's interesting to me is that there isn't like a definitive this is across the board. Okay, let's look at Wikipedia, and we also know Wikipedia is usually put by someone who got to the punch first to put something on Wikipedia. and sometimes it's Wikipedia themselves. So let me see if I can just, within the first sentence, get a definition for critical race theory. It says here, in Wikipedia, okay, critical race theory, CRT, is a cross-disciplinary examination of social and civil rights by social and civil rights scholars and activists of how laws, social and political movements, media shape and are shaped by social conceptions of race and ethnicity. One more time. Critical race theory, and again, I'm trying to get an understanding of what critical race theory is. Before I show this video, because again, listen, I am forever a learner, and I believe that it's very important as a forever learner that I'm always being very clear about what it is that I am talking about, or what it is I am putting out there into universe, or whatever I'm consuming. So again, critical race theory, CRT, is a cross-disciplinary examination. So it's different subject areas looking at, analyzing, breaking down something, right? So okay, just making sure Twitter's doing its thing. All right. So looking at cross-disciplinary examination, social sciences, the hardcore sciences, philosophy, all these different areas looking at examining something, right? So the examination is happening by social and civil rights scholars and activists, so thinkers and doers, of how laws, how we're governed, social and political movements, those who have political ideas or beliefs in how society should be, and the media, the thing that you're consuming right now. Where am I? And the media are shaped by social conceptions, what we think collectively or individually about race. So it says conceptions of race and ethnicity, about race and ethnicities. But the thing people don't fail to realize, race and ethnicity are two different things, because you can be a particular race, but within that race, there are groups or divisions within that race of identities. People see black. Black means what exactly? Because are you talking about African? Are you talking about Caribbean? Are you talking about West African, South African, even within Nigeria, where there's over 200 distinct languages, and tribes. If you go to Nigeria and you say, hey, who are you? Where are you from? Or what are you? People will immediately identify their tribe. Okay, in Nigeria, when somebody asks me, where are you from? I immediately say I'm Igbo. If I meet a Nigerian, I immediately say I'm Igbo. I don't even say I'm Nigerian. I don't even say I'm African. No one in Africa says they're African. No one in Nigeria, outside of being nationalistic, no one says that they're Nigerian. You call out what your tribe is, your ethnicity. So even here in America, we have ethnicities. That's the reason why we say Latinx, because it represents the vast diversity of people of Hispanic and Latin bloodline, whether it's European, whether it's first peoples of this continent, right? So that's something. So this is interesting because I'm reading this and this makes sense. It's social analysis of how what we say and what we think and what we believe and what we do dictates how race and ethnicity is seen. Okay, all right, but again, why people are talking about CRT being taught in elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools? Because again, when we talk about social and civil rights scholars and activists, these are people who are typically removed from our traditional school buildings, right? Okay, so let me go back to my main screen over here, and I'm going to go ahead and play this video, okay? And again, this was sent to me earlier today. I watched it one time, and I was like, I need to put this out there. I need to put this on the show and get some opinions about it, because I want to build my understanding of what critical race theory is and why people are so emotionally against it, right? So let me go ahead and set this up.
The last
Up.
is
So I'm going to screen, and I'm going to, man, if I only had an assistant. All right, here we go. And play.
The last name is Amanchukwu.
Thank you very much for correcting me, Mr. Amanchukwu.
Yes, no problem.
Thank you.
It means I know God. Luke chapter 17:2 says that it's better for a person to have a millstone tied around their neck and to be thrown into the sea than for anyone to harm or damage a child. And so the question today to the school board is, only you know whether or not your role, the policies, the curriculum, and the things that you allow in this school system in Wake County, only you know whether or not a millstone is tied around your neck. The reality is this: God is going to judge every last one of you for decisions that are made on behalf of children. You know, this past year we spent $1 million on a diversity office. And how did that benefit Black children? How did it benefit children in general? Well, 78% of 3rd through 8th grade Black students are not proficient in math in Wake County. We're wasting taxpayer dollars putting money towards this diversity office that's not benefiting those who need it the most. 66% of 3rd through 8th grade students are not proficient in reading. Black students, they're not reading on grade level. They're not performing mathematically, and they're not going to be able to get jobs in the fields like STEM. But we're wasting money on a diversity, equity, and inclusion office while we are failing Black students in the name of diversity. You know, in the Jim Crow era, Black students were locked out of the public school system. But today they are trapped in. And many of these students need options. They need school choice. They need the opportunity to take their taxpayer dollars and take it to school systems that will benefit them and support them and educate them.
All right. So he goes on, and he goes on, and he goes, you know, as you can tell, that fervor and that intensity in his speech. But he said some things that were interesting to me, because again, this video, this clip on Twitter, it says here, Black man leaves woke school board shaking after dismantling CRT to their faces. Again, he dismantled so they're saying that what he said, you know, dismantled, you know, after dismantling CRT to their faces. And again, I'm kind of confused here, because he's making comparisons to what's being taught in classrooms, you know, as required in the name of diversity and equity, and the realities of how students are performing in schools in Wake County. And I'm not sure where Wake County is. I'm thinking it's Florida, but I might be wrong. Somebody please correct me. And he gives data. And the data he gives is that 70% of children, again, I'm not sure whether he meant just Black children, all children, you know, because Black children would be a subgroup, or was he talking about all children? And either way, 78% of students not being proficient in math is incredibly alarming. Then 6% not being proficient in reading, in literacy, again, incredibly alarming. You know, it's funny because they said over the past 20 years, over 130 million Americans read below the sixth grade level. Like they read lower, so they either are at sixth grade or all the way to not being able to read at all here in America. Over 130 million Americans. So, if I'm going to look at this particular locality as an example of what's happening across the country, that is alarming to me. As an educator, that's alarming to me. It terrifies me. As a parent, it terrifies me because I have to ask myself this question: what's happening that's preventing us from being able to truly educate our children? To provide them what they need to be academically proficient and to be and also exhibit a level of mastery, especially in those two subjects, mathematics and reading. Because if you can read, writing is not that far behind. If you're proficient in math, I'm talking about up to at least pre-algebra, you have the ability to reason mathematically and be able to navigate the world with basic, someone can tell you that, this house is this many square feet and you know how to measure it. If you're being lied to. That's why math is important. Somebody can tell you, well, your interest rate is this, and you can do that calculation and see, does the numbers add up? Basic survival stuff. We're not saying math for the sake of, mapping out a space mission to Mars. We're talking about math for everyday living and survival, right? And reading, the ability to take letters, turn them into words, turn them into sentences, and construct logical, clearly thought out thoughts, right? And also be able to look at text and draw meaning out of it, and exercise critical reasoning, to be able to read. A politician can't just tell you. You can research what they're telling you about what they're going to do or what the policies are yourself. These are just skills that you need as a citizen. And the thing that's scary to me is these numbers are not that far off across the country, especially in urban settings. Not far off at all. But again, is pouring money into I think he said $1 million. Again, I don't know. I don't know if this is true or not true. This is what he's saying in this video. Is that in alignment with what critical race theory is? Again, the definition here that's given, at least at minimum, in that first sentence says critical race theory is a cross-disciplinary examination by social and civil rights scholars and activists of how laws, social and political movements and media shape and are shaped by social conceptions and race and ethnicity. Just what's in that definition itself, if that's what's being taught in schools, that's heavy. That requires critical reasoning skills. Because who are the scholars you're reading? Who are the civil rights leaders, activists that you're studying? What laws are you looking at? What social and political movements? Or are you just having somebody just spew at you? What grade level are you able to actually handle this depth of critical thinking and analysis? Kindergarten, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade? Is this AP level course, college level course? Because whenever I hear scholars, and activists, I'm thinking about Kwame Ture. I'm thinking about Malcolm X. I'm thinking about, Toni Morrison. I'm thinking about Nicole Hannah-Jones. People who are in those spaces who are doing deep research, data analysis, critically thinking and creating these spaces. So, again, I'm asking myself, are people using, this concept of critical race theory to kind of create a definition for what diversity and inclusion and equity is? Because to me, it sounds like diversity, inclusion, and equity would be something that's being studied within critical race theory to improve upon, how we make sure that kids are reading at grade level, how we make sure that kids are proficient mathematically at grade level. Please do me a favor. If you're listening to this and you want to join in, call in at any time. If you again, the URL is tinyurl.com/tsp-video-guest. You put that into your search bar and whatever you use it, whether it's Chrome or you're using Firefox or you're using Safari. Put that in there. What it's going to do is going to be to a screen. You type your name in, you enter, and all of a sudden you ring over on my end, and I'll bring you in, and you come talk to me. But however, I forgot to do that. Let me see. Let me make sure here. I got to make sure I'm also checking the email. The other option, again, is you can shoot me an email. Let me make sure, first of all, where's my email at? You can also shoot me an email at... you can also shoot me an email... Okay, I thought I had an email, but that's a business call right there. Somebody tell me that they're loving my show, but however they want to know if they can support my business. But yeah, you can also shoot me an email at ask@thesneakerprinciple.com, and drop your number on there, and I could call you directly myself. Again, the goal here is to make this as accessible as possible for anyone who wants to engage in the conversation. But if you just want to listen, that's fine as well, because I have a lot to say. I have a lot of questions to ask. So again, back to the topic at hand. Not even how. Let's forget about how we fix this, because I'm not even sure what the problem is. But I am concerned when I hear that a school district is spending over $1 million to create a whole entire office, because that means salaries and positions and people who are now looking at diversity, inclusion, and equity, right? But what's the result in the classroom? How does that impact students in the classroom? How do we make sure that they're leaving, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, 17th grade, 8th, 9th, going to high school, 9, 10, 11, 12, graduating from high school, and having what they need to go into the world and conquer? That is the mission here, to make sure that our kids are getting what they need to go into the world and conquer. And however, that's not what's happening. That's not what's happening. And again, I'm just asking that question. What are we doing wrong here? But even better yet, if you're a teacher, you're listening, how does this make you feel? If you're in those spaces where critical race theory and diversity and inclusion is being used in a fashion that you do not agree with, as far as how it's really supporting our children in being academically proficient. Yeah, and yes, diversity, race, and inclusion is very important. Like I said in the beginning of this podcast, because me myself, as someone who came into an America, when I came to America in the early '80s, that wasn't very inclusive of an African child, And when I moved to LA, coming from countries and places that I lived prior to America, where race was never even brought up. I didn't know I was black until I came to, I did not know I was black until I came to America. I remember when the first time somebody told me I was black, I was very confused. I must have been like 8 or 9, and I was completely just like, what is that? Huh? Because for me, black is a color. I'm sorry. Let's be correct. Black is the absence of color. Close your eyes. What do you see? Without, if there's no light shining through your eyelids, you see nothing. You see what we call black. So I was very confused as a child when someone said that you're black, and I was like, what? So how does this really, how is any of this helping our kids in schools? How? And that's my question. As a parent of 2 children who are still relatively young, my son is 2.5 years old, my daughter is 4. Even today, I went to Target. I went to Target to do my diaper run. My daughter still does the pull-ups, for when she goes to bed. And my son he's being potty trained right now, and but I still gotta buy those diapers and still gotta buy those wipes. But almost at the finish line, right? Almost at the finish line. But again, I was there, and I purchased well, I got the diapers, I got the baby wipes, but I always go into the book section. And when I went to the book section, what was I looking for? I'm looking for books for my kids. Because again, I don't care if my daughter is 4 years old. I don't care if it's 2.5 years old. They're never too young to learn how to read. And somebody might be saying, wait a minute, let them live. No, my son can read. He can. How do I know he can read? Because literally, he's starting to get beyond sight words. The other day I was at a restaurant, and I wrote on a piece of paper for him, FROG. And he looked at it, and he went. He didn't just scream frog. He said, frog. Because we're teaching them phonetics and how to break it down. 2.5 years old. Because in my household, I know how critical it is reading is. And I know what that means when children can't read. Real quick, wow. Listen, I just got a comment here. The lead attorney, much love to you. Thank you so much for the salute. I really appreciate that. I'm a big fan. And I have let me see here. I have somebody. Okay, let's bring Aislinn into the conversation. Aislinn, how are you doing this evening?
Hi, Mr. Njoku. How are you?
I'm doing good.
That's good.
So what are your thoughts? What about critical race theory, diversity inclusion? Like, tell me, as a teacher, as a student of education, what are your thoughts about this? How has this impacted you?
So I thought that your example based on your son, how you're teaching him all these words and everything, and increasing his vocabulary is a very good thing you're doing, because not a lot of parents are dedicated to that, because they don't have the time, or they have other responsibilities, or they have their situations, their issues, whatever the case may be, that sometimes they're not in that level that they're supposed to be developed. So they have other ways that they can see that. Either it could be through technology or through TV shows, but it's also what the parents put as like a no, and then what they put as a yes, like for them to watch. Because there are some parents that they influence their kids very young to see things that they're not supposed to be seeing yet. I understand that they want to teach them um of what it could be like for them, and all these things, but you don't know if it's gonna be the same. Like, you don't know. Like, it could be a different scenario based on how the parents grew up, based on how you grew up, you know. Um, but you have to teach them also the right and wrong choices of life, too. And that's what some parents lack too. Because they think, they see outside in the world and they're like, oh no, like, I'm not gonna let my child see this, because I don't know if they're going to learn anything from it or not. Like, you don't know, because you don't know what
Let me
your
ask you a
child
question.
is interested in, or what's their lack of interest. You don't know.
I hear you. I hear you. So let me ask you a question. I want your perspective as early childhood teacher. There's a lot of push to make sure that we're really engaging children in concepts around diversity, concepts around equity, concepts around inclusion, right? So when we're looking at that preschool, kindergarten, first grade, that span, right? What does that look like for you in your classrooms? Is that something that you believe that kids at that age could really understand? And especially when we're talking about like something as complex as critical race theory.
I think that at that age they can understand it, but in the simplest terms possible, like in the easiest words possible for them to understand. You could show them first by, either reading a story to them, about, it could be a famous person that did art, or it could be, music that you hear from those cultures. Like, that's how you could start it off at first, in order for them to understand that, in society, we have to be accepting towards other um, ethnicities, and appreciate the ethnicity. Even though you're not from there, you have to at least respect it. That's the three main words that we were talking about last week, how we said about kindness, humanity, you know um accepting. Those three words are the best way that you could teach the child, to show them that it's okay to be different. It's okay to be from another country where, you like, let's say, empanadas, and let's say you like curry, for example. Like, that's fine, that's okay, because it's okay to try new things, and to see new things, and to explore new cultures, and to explore new places that you've never seen before, and you could understand them in a way that you might say, like, oh, I like that, I want to go see more of that, I want to see more of the
So let me,
music, I want to see more of.
so let me ask you this then. So now, and I totally agree with that. In school classroom should be a space where we're exploring, not just we're exploring the content in a way that opens you to the world. I understand the world is a vast place. There's different cultures, because especially living in America and most of the modern world, you're going to be crossing and intersecting with different people of different backgrounds.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But now, how do we make sure that we're teaching that, but also making sure that there is high levels of literacy and math skills being developed, like just the content knowledge is being developed. As an early childhood teacher, how do you make sure that you're teaching your children about the world, but they're also proficient readers?
Yes.
And they're also
So
good
I
in
was
their math
actually
skills.
going to get to that when you stopped me. So what you can do is, like, when you're reading, and let's say you're reading to the class a book, let's say it's about my country, let's say Ecuador, and let's say it has like the word equator, or it has the word South America, words like that, they can understand more of how that how that culture is, um and how to understand it better. So then when they actually do learn about the country, they're more, they have that mindset more developed, but also they know where that culture is from, because now they're gonna know, oh, it's from another country, it's from another continent, it's not from America. Just showing them the main words will help them to understand what those words actually mean, even though they don't understand it, because you have to tell the child what the word means. Because if you're just reading a book to them, and you come across a word that you don't tell them what the meaning is, they're going to ask you, because they're very smart. Like kids, little kids
Yeah.
especially, they're smart. They track your every move, so that's the thing that you have to teach them. Because if you don't teach them, is how are they going to become better readers, how are they going to become better thinkers, better, the word that I want to use, even though it's not related to the topic, better philosophers, um, in that aspect. So it depends on how the teacher teaches, and how they're willing to develop their high level thinking when it comes to reading, because that's what I feel like the schools lack sometimes. Like, some of the teachers lack, that they don't really show them a lot of these words, and they don't show them how to pronounce it correctly. Because I've had a lot of kids that they don't pronounce the word correctly. So I do is, like, my dad taught me when I was little, was my hand would go over my chin, and I would hear the vibration of the sound, so then I would know how to pronounce it correctly. And I use that with my students to this day, and they pronounce the words so well that I don't even have to repeat it a second time, or keep constantly repeating it to them.
So let me ask you a question. So let's shift the conversation, because what you're sharing is valuable. You're sharing instructional strategies that you're using in the classroom, and showing that how you're thinking about how to better engage your students in developing those skills. So now I'm going to ask you this as a teacher. There are states right now that are saying, we don't want you to teach, in not New York, but there's other states where the teachers, I've met those teachers who've said to me, and school leaders who've said to me, in my state, and those states remain nameless for right now, you can look it up, who are saying, in your classrooms, you're not to engage in any conversation about culture. We don't want to hear about empanadas. We don't want to hear about curry. We don't want to hear about, any of that. You're just going to teach the straight line Eurocentric curriculum, and diversity, inclusion, all that stuff is completely not to happen. And if you sneak it in and we find out, you will be fired. How do you feel about that as a teacher?
I think that in a way, I understand where they're coming from, because there might be some people in the school, or even the parents, they don't want you to teach certain things because they just don't want their child to be influenced in that, which I understand. But in another way, um I don't like it, because how can you show a child, how do you celebrate a holiday, for instance, or how do you play a certain instrument, or um how this person changed the lives of others, it's something that it should be shown, because especially now in society, what are we even looking at, especially right now with like the gun violence, and with all these people dedicating their lives to doing something, but it's not for the good, it's for the worst. And how can you teach kindness and humanity and decency if you're not showing it the same way in society? I think that's something that I was going to mention, that's something that we lack today. We lack that decency, that humanity, that kindness, that sympathetic, empathetic. That's something that we lack, and it's sad that we have to see our world crash down with with the people, because the the high anarchy is the one that's making us suffer. It's not us. Like, it's government officials that are making us suffer for the consequences that they did, because we say our voice in something, um and we want this change, and then it doesn't happen, you know or they make us do this choice where we have to be forced. Like, we have two people running, and you don't like either of them, but they want you to pick. And it's like, why would I pick somebody if they don't have any of the reasons for me to vote for them, or any of the changes that they're not going to be changing for me, and I'm a person that I say, in my mentality, that, how you were saying, like, there are some people that are not meant to be teachers. If you're not following, because you and I know very well that if you don't follow or at least read educational stuff, like, if you're not on top of that, you shouldn't be a teacher. Because how are you going to be a better teacher if you don't read the guidelines or the articles of how to be a good teacher and how not to be a bad teacher? you know that's just my mentality.
And one thing I want to add before we end this portion of this conversation is and thank you for saying that, because I am a big believer that not everyone's meant to be a teacher. I'm a believer of that, because one thing about being a teacher or being an educator in any capacity, it can be a job. It can be a job, but it should not be a job. Because
I agree.
as a teacher, you have the power to shift the world. And people might say, what do you mean? I mean, how does one teacher have the power to shift the world or impact society deeply? And I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who talked about Malcolm X. And Malcolm X, I think he was about 9 or 10 years old. And he told his teacher, I want to be a lawyer. I'm going to be a lawyer when I grow up. And that teacher told him, wait a minute, little Malcolm, I don't know. At that point, he wasn't Malcolm X, he was Malcolm Little. And told him, black people don't become lawyers. What are you talking about? So you should do something more acceptable, something easier. Why don't you become a carpenter? Jesus was a carpenter. This is what this little boy was told by a teacher in the classroom.
Mhm.
And it's funny because, in my opinion, I understand the time, the space. It was totally uncalled for. It was soul crushing for this little boy to be told, because you're black, you cannot be a lawyer. But also, it was one of the moments that fueled him into his adulthood, and he became a civil rights leader and somebody who impacted society. So we
Mhm.
have to be very careful,
Yeah.
because if he didn't have that fortitude within himself to
Yeah.
really push back
Mhm.
emotionally and say,
Yeah.
I'm going to keep moving
But
forward,
it's how
we
we
wouldn't
said
have
last
him.
week too that most teachers are lacking that personal connection too. That's one of the things that they lack as well. Because I mean, fortunate for me, like the reason I'm saying I believe in diversity and everything, because I have traveled almost everywhere around the world, and just to see those little things. And once I come back, I'm like, I'm grateful I got to see this and I got to see what I love about the culture. But then I saw all the time what I should be grateful for when it comes to living in America. Like I just went recently, a few months ago, to Egypt. I went to Egypt. So a lot of people
Wow.
would have been like, you're crazy to go to Egypt.
I've been to
But
Egypt. I've been to
yeah,
Egypt. A beautiful, beautiful country. It's a different
yeah, it
world,
is.
but it's a beautiful
Yeah, it was
country.
beautiful. So a lot of my church friends and everything, they were like, I loved when we went to Mount Sinai. I love seeing the Nile River, but then after that, I would never go back to Egypt, because I saw how the people there were living and they suffered and all these things they were saying. And in my head, I was like, "You guys are right. Like, we should be grateful that we live here, that we have, this freedom, that we have, our voices heard, that we have the power to have these actions changed, because there are some countries that don't have that. And when they do it, they have consequences for it. And also to see the history come alive. Like I went to Israel too after we went to Egypt, and just to see where the stories of Jesus came from, and Mary Magdalene, and all these stories like come to life in our faces. For me, it was amazing, because it's like now I understand the Bible better, you know even though I've read it and I'm like, okay, I understand it, but sometimes you have to see to believe it.
Yeah, you
Um,
need that perspective.
yeah, you need
So
that
it's not
perspective
just, it's
to
just
see it
not a
to
story
believe
anymore.
it. And it was amazing, honestly. Like I'm so grateful that I went. And at the end of the day, like my favorite part was when we went to the Sea of Galilee, because it was like when I saw that, I saw heaven. I was like, wow, I understand now like the actual story. So it's something that teachers lack to show their students. um it doesn't even have to be to go to Israel. Like you could just go and do like an experiment, let's say, of like, how the Sea of Galilee, let's say, um, makes a wave, and how much, the wave goes or something like that. Because that's science related. So
Yeah,
to make it something that you could relate to, and for the child to understand even better would help. And that's something that, teachers lack. And you say to yourself, why don't I teach it that way?
yeah. Well, Aislinn, thank you so much again for calling in. I really appreciate
You're
you.
welcome.
Those of you who are watching for the first time, Aislinn is one of my former students who, again, I met her when she was in ninth grade, and now she is a teacher, has a master's degree in early childhood education. And I'm saying, listen, I can't wait to have principal, Aislinn on the show one day soon. Listen, you keep laughing. I'm putting it out there. I'm putting it out there into the universe, because I remember when I first became a teacher, somebody had told me I would be a principal, and I would laugh too, because I was like, I'm going to be a teaching fellow. I'm going to teach for 2 years. I'm going to go to law
No,
school.
I'm not laughing
Yeah.
because you said it. I'm laughing because my dad told me that literally the other day after I talked it to you. Like he said that to me, and I was like, Dad, I don't know if I can do it. Like I don't know.
You don't
I
need
mean,
to know
I
how to do
love
it.
kids and everything, but then I was remembering like the what you had said and your experience and stuff. But also I see it too, and I'm just like, I don't know if I have the capacity to handle that. Like all these kids and
Nobody does.
be
Listen,
on top
nobody
of these
does.
teachers. Like
Yeah, nobody does until you're in it. That's what leadership is. You just don't know until you're able to do it. So, again, thank you so
yeah.
much. Have an amazing night. Have a great
You're
weekend,
welcome. You're
and I'll
welcome,
talk to you
Mr.
soon
Joe.
again.
Before I hang up the call, whoever's watching, please like, share, subscribe. Watch all his
I
social
appreciate that.
content, please, because he is the best. He has the best advice. He's very inspirational. And hopefully, you'll see more of his content and you'll like it. So that's all I have to say.
All right. Have a good night,
You
and we'll
too.
talk soon. All right.
Okay, bye.
So again, you know, I love getting perspective from educators, and my goal is to have more educators call in, and 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 Aislinn is somebody who I really respect because she knows what she wants to do. She knew what she wanted to do. And not only that, she's working with the foundation of our school system, our early childhood, because those foundational skills are put in there. Then our kids are able to move on through the early grades, on grade level knowing how to read and be able to build on their math skills. Because again, this whole entire conversation started off with this video about Wake County CRT, critical race theory, but then my question was, what is critical race theory? The definition that I read in the beginning doesn't quite match what I hear that's happening in different spaces. I can see the interconnectionalities, but it still doesn't quite make sense, because at the end of the day, what's important to me is what is happening in the classrooms for our children. What is the end product? What are we producing? Some people might say to me, listen, Mr. Njoku or Uche or Sneaker Principal, yeah, you're saying all that, but you don't understand. Yeah, trust me, I do understand. 17 years in New York City schools, I do understand. As a teacher, I do understand. As a dean, I do understand. Shifting school culture, I do understand. As an assistant principal, as an instructional leader, working to move entire school cultures and systems into a place of success and productivity, I do understand. As a principal, now being the one in the seat, 2 different schools, a middle school and a high school in the Bronx and in Brooklyn, and dealing with all the things that happens with running schools and staying focused on what's the most important thing: our children being successful. That's the goal. That's the end result. Because again, like this gentleman said in this video, 78% of the children there, again, he wasn't quite clear whether he was just talking about the black children or all children. 78% of them are not proficient in mathematics in that county or in that district. 66% of them are not proficient in reading. If you can't read, what are we talking about? If the children can't read, I mean, let's be honest here. And this is now me forming my belief system around, from this conversation. Diversity, inclusion, equity means very little if it's built into schools and the schools are producing children that are illiterate. Because I need to be a capable thinker, reader. I need to be seen as intellectually equal. Regardless of what people may think, I need to know that I'm intellectually equal and up to the task of going into the world. Regardless if I go to college or go to the military or go into the workforce or start my own business, I need to know that I can navigate in any spaces, and face challenges, whatever the case is, knowing that this right here is up to par to the job. I need to know that. Because if I'm illiterate, if I'm reading below 6th grade level as part of the 130 million Americans that are reading below 6th grade level, the number of, I saw a number, and I don't want to jack it up. The number of adults who never read a book after elementary school or after high school, they never read a book again in their lives. It's outstanding. It was in the millions, tens of millions. And I'm sure people are lying. I'm probably saying like, yeah, I do. I've read a book. Again, these are the realities of the world. Because if your brain is not built and up to the task, then guess what? You will be a victim of inequality. You will be a victim of not being included. You will be a victim of being relegated to spaces that are not that become not diverse because the excuse is going to be you're not even up to part of being what a citizen should be. You're not a contributor. You're not a producer. I asked this question. I made a short video last week or 2 weeks ago where I asked this question. And it had to do with mental health and the amount of money is being put into mental health services in schools, which I believe is necessary. However, I made the connection, to me at least, that if we are pushing for mental health, and not ensuring that our children are literate, in the long term and even more so the short term, are we not contributing to poor mental health? But how does it feel for a child to get older and older in the school system and not be able to read? Do they feel good about themselves? Are they living in fear that they might be found out? If the teacher says, all right, today we're going to read aloud, everyone is going to read a chapter, a paragraph out loud to the classroom. The kid in the classroom let's say it's a 10th grade classroom, the kid who's reading at a 3rd grade level, out of that 10th grade textbook, what anxiety are they going through physically? Are they now thinking to themselves, oh my God, I can't. It's going to come to me. And all this is going through their heads. So when that kid blows up and starts cursing another student out or throws a book in the classroom, start cracking jokes or disrupts the class, is that their fail-safe mechanism come into play so you don't find out that they can't read or they can't do the math problem? And trust me, I know what that feels like because I was that kid. In elementary school, I was that kid. When you call me to the board, listen, the room would start to spin, my breathing would start to accelerate, I would start to sweat profusely and all anxiety because I struggled. I was a struggling learner. And I hated going to school. I was terrified of going to school. And it's funny because back then I didn't know anything about mental health, but now as an adult, I look back and I'm like, wow, that was traumatic. The trauma that I went through as a child, struggling in school. But I have an amazing mother who once it was realized that I had my struggles, made sure I got all the support that I needed, and was able to climb out of that dark place as a student who was functioning poorly, and thrown into special education. A student who, I didn't know. Listen, I can tell you right now, I can tell you exactly the moment that I realized I could read. I can tell you exactly what it was. It was the summer of 1986. Yeah, summer of 1986 was when it dawned on me. Oh snap! I can read. I was about 10 years old, 10 years old, but when I realized, oh my God, I can read. I can literally read the sentence and not have to fight to just make sense of the words or even pronounce the words. I can read the sentence and be like, oh, this means this. I remember, listen, I might be going way off topic, but I'm telling you, that's the summer. Listen, I love my mother because I don't know if she even knew what she was doing, but she's one of those African women, Pentecostal, who was like, the devil is a liar. My son will not be a failure. She tell me all the time, Uche, I don't care what they're telling you. You're my child. You will not fail. If you fail, I have failed. She got me all my teachers in Nigeria to come into the house. Monday was my math teacher at school. Tuesday was my English teacher at school. Thursday was my science teacher at school. Then Thursday was my history teacher at school. They would come after school, Monday through Thursday, with me for 2 hours, and she would pay them and feed them. This went on for a year, and I struggled and I fought through it. But I remember the summer that my mother gave me, she gave me 4 books. 4 books. Okay? This is the mother I had. She didn't care about sneakers and clothes. That was not her thing. She got me 4 books, and to this day, I know the 4 books. And it's funny because mind you, I was about 10 years old. Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. Animal Farm. Animal Farm. What's this? Why is my brain going numb now? What's the book with Lord of the Flies and Oliver Twist? Oliver Twist, Lord of the Flies, Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart, and Animal Farm. And as a 10-year-old, I just thought these were books that kids would read. But my mother made sure in her own way that my lack of confidence in reading, but she knew she already invested a lot of money and energy on her son. And that's something. She gave me those books, and I didn't leave the house. I just read. And I'm sorry, she gave me 5 books. The 5th one was the big old red Webster's Dictionary. Webster's Dictionary. Because she told me, any word you do not know, open the dictionary and find that word. If you don't understand what it's telling you, come and ask me. I would tell you. I would help you. So over the course of that summer, I got through those 4 books. Until this day, my 4 favorite books, because from 10 years old, I got to high school, I read each of those 4 books in high school. Not for personal reading, as part of the curriculum in my AP courses. In 11th and 12th grade, when I got to college, guess what happened again? My freshman seminar class in college, Lord of the Flies was on the book list. So was Animal Farm. Further into my college education, I took an Africana Studies course. Things Fall Apart was there again. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, my mother got me some college level books to read when I was 10 years old. No, that's not what she did. She said, listen, I've given you all the tools, and now I need to reinforce them for you. And I am today who I am because of that. And this is what we need for our children. The 78% of kids who are not proficient in math, the 66% of kids who are not proficient in reading in Wake County, or let me just say this, across the country, because these numbers are not that different across the country. That's what they need. The confidence of knowing that you are capable academically. That is how you really combat, the lack of diversity. Because those kids who can now read and think and move on to college level courses, AP courses, guess what happens now? They get the high SAT scores for those who are college bound. They pass those entrance exams with flying colors into certification programs. And guess what happens? They're the ones who diversify those industries that might not have a lot of minority kids in there. They're the ones who make sure that inclusion is a reality and not just a concept that we keep talking about. Because we've been talking about diversity, inclusion, and equity for decades. Decades in America. So just because you build a department within a district doesn't mean anything if we're not making sure that our kids are getting what they need. And my career as an educator, that has been my primary focus. How do I make sure my kids that are under my roof? I tell kids all the time, when you're in school, you're under my roof. I become daddy and I become mommy. I'm grandpa. I'm auntie. I'm uncle. Listen, for some of y'all, I might be your pet dog. It's cool. But in my building, in my space, my job is to make sure that you're getting everything that you need, so that when you leave this place, whether it was the middle school that I was the principal of or the high school that I just left a few months ago, not even 2 months ago, my expectations when those students were done and left my house, left my school, that they had every tool they needed to go into the world to conquer. I don't believe in surviving. I don't believe in just succeeding. But what is success? It's relative, right? But conquering, there is no relative to conquering. When you hear somebody is a conqueror, you don't see someone who's passive. You don't see somebody who's kind of conquering. No, you see somebody who's dominating. That's what we need of our children. That is how you create a space, a world where we start to crack down on race and racism and all these different things, and spaces that are not diverse and not inclusive, by making sure that we are capable, regardless of what your race is, your gender identity. We have to create spaces in schools that we are making sure our kids are mastering the content and they're being successful. All right, ladies and gentlemen, listen. I could keep going. I just looked up at the clock. It's 11:06, so I'm already 6 minutes past the hour that I dedicate to this time. And again, please join me. Join me on Sunday. Sunday is where we just it's just me and you, and I look through news stories, what's happening in education, and try to make sense of those spaces. Today was Teacher Therapy Friday, and I hope I gave you something to think about, something so either some new ideas to really consider, or better yet, an opportunity for you to realize you're not the only one who might be thinking the way what I presented this evening. Remember, in conclusion, our responsibilities as educators, as teachers. I was told this when I first became a teacher, and I didn't quite understand what it was until I realized I was doing it. I was a subversive. I did my job as was expected of me, but I also did the most. I wanted my children, my students, to rock, to be confident, to be cocky with it. As a matter of fact, when I became principal after the middle school, I was told this, Mr. Njoku, you're cocky. I'm like, I am? And the worst part about your students are cocky, your kids are cocky too. I'm like, what's wrong with that? Because if my students are walking around with their heads up and they feel confident about who they are, come on now. I'm sorry. In some instances, that level of just self-confidence is a cure for mental health issues. Because often we deal with mental health issues. Yes, there are biological reasons, but usually when it comes to social emotional spaces, it's because we don't feel confident. We don't feel safe. And that's one thing that I aspire to do, to create spaces for my students to feel safe. I aspire to create spaces for my children, my son and daughter, to feel safe and not only feel safe, but feel confident to walk into spaces and speak up for themselves. My daughter right now tells me, Daddy, you yelled at me. That was not nice. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. I did raise my voice. I apologize. And she's 4. That's what I want her. That's who I want her to be. To have a voice and be cocky with it. There's nothing wrong with that. And I'll tell you right now, and that's the one to say. If you want your kids to feel confident, cocky, and about their business, make sure they're reading a grade level or above. Make sure they're proficient in math in school. So when people ask them how's school, they're like, yo, I'm rocking, I'm killing it. There's no reason that every student is not an A student. Because all A student means is that they're showing mastery. And for a child to show mastery, it's because the teacher is doing their job to make sure the child is meeting those spaces. And if you're a teacher, you're a principal, you're a system leader, that's your job. That's why you decide to go into education, to make sure that that who you serve have all the tools and the resources to be successful. All right. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time this evening. Please, please, please like, share, subscribe, whatever platform you are on this evening. I thank you. If you're on Twitter, thank you so much for joining me this evening. For those of you who are on Facebook, thank you again. On LinkedIn, I appreciate you. Much love. And of course, YouTube, again, thank you so much. Be well this evening. In closing, I know I already said in closing, but just 20 seconds. Take care of yourself this weekend. Make sure that you turn off Monday. Focus on Saturday and Sunday. Self-care. Focus on yourself. Focus on your family. Whatever is happening on Monday, it will be there on Monday for you. So why don't you just go ahead and be in the moment of the weekend and be with your family and friends and really restore yourself. Okay. So again, thank you so much. Have an amazing night. Until next time. All right. Be well.
And now he's been promoted. His job, principal.